Some Battlefield maps are great, others are terrible. The vast majority lies somewhere in between, elevated by a unique feature or held back by a critical flaw. Often some of the most divisive and popular maps in the series, these are the mid-tier maps of Battlefield. Situated at the foot of a Norwegian mountain range, Narvik is one of Battlefield 5's premier maps, being the choice of the game's alpha and beta. Set during the early days of World War II, German interest in the country's iron ore resources prompted an invasion. The backdrop of the battle sees the occupied coastal town partially ruined by naval shelling, the British fleet responsible just offshore still fighting it out, while some large vessels clearly already paid the price. Narvik is a linear map design with 6 neutral objectives. These are arrayed in a 2-2-2 layout with good spacing in between. The 3 on the north traverse a high ground path which rolls through the village, while the lower 3 flags make up the town's industrial operations defined by the large iron ore railway bridge, the most iconic feature of the map. The deployment zones feature double spawn icons for greater flexibility, but these are rudimentary and prone to extreme containment. The map border on the northern side is flanked by mountains, yet a large area of the destroyed town sits within the playable area. This is one of the more debatable aspects of the map, since while it occasionally acts as a route to scoot around the battle, its high ground slope is far more commonly occupied by snipers hiding in the ruins, much to the annoyance of players fighting in the town. Having a PaK-40 artillery gun up here also wasn't necessary. Slimming down the northern border would have definitely impacted map flow negatively, so the better solution probably needed to be a reevaluation of the high ground slope. Narvik is very prone to the complete lockdown of all the capture points, though really isn't subject to domination by one team more than the other. High frequency of one-sided games is enabled by the confines of its linear boundaries, which safeguards the flanks and allows teams to focus on the front lines. No extraneous path or road, save the isolated houses of the north, permit a real flanking or breakout option. Regardless, when lobbies are not filled with too many snipers lining the hills for one team, a balanced back-and-forth game is a viable outcome. The artillery base A flag is located in the northwest on the British side. It is among the map's most impactful areas despite being nearly empty. Its capture radius comprises only 2 houses, and these can largely be destroyed, leaving scant cover. Primarily defined by wintry terrain including multiple snowdrifts, its importance lies in its high ground and slightly isolated position. The elevation being similar to the train bridge to the south is good in that it prevents one from dominating the other. However, it creates verticality issues with the rest of the map, and particularly the British deployments. Toward the east, the high ground provides an incentive for tanks and snipers to sit and not move into the main battle, leaving their teammates potentially short-handed. To the west, the terrain gets slightly higher, where added map details like bunkers and artillery guns sit and are utilized in other game modes. It then descends into a slope toward both UK deployments, far steeper on the west end, providing significant advantage against reinforcing British players. Blandly named, the B flag is simply called Train. Located in the southwest, it is the place where the western train yard links up with the map-defining elevated cargo bridge. Its radius comprises a sizable portion of the initial bridge and its surrounding area, but most fighting takes place on the bridge itself, where a parked train provides hefty cover for players and divides the platform. A supply hut provides cover up top, while on the low ground, the bridge arches offer protection for players underneath. Scaffolding provides a shortcut between these levels. The train bridge runs northeast towards its collapsed section where the D flag is located. On both of its levels, a smattering of iron ore mine carts provide excellent cover for player movement. A series of tarps blowing in the wind blocks line of sight to the lower floor, while up top 2 additional covered huts provide a bit more protection. This landmark is overall a very cool part of Narvik. Aesthetically, it stands out and provides a unique gameplay element, allowing for a combination of ranged and close-quarters fighting. Its verticality advantages are countered by its multi-floor layout, including ladders and ramps leading up and down, as well as the high ground to the north. However, it sometimes gets lost in the rest of the wintry environment, especially from a distance. That isn't to say it's bad, rather I wish the rest of the map had some other distinction. Going out of order here because it makes sense, the D objective is found at the other end of the bridge. The loading bay maintains most of the same gameplay elements found around the B point, but with more surrounding exposure. The destroyed edge of the bridge leaves the area with cover provided by the iron ore piles and minecart wreckage. The capture radius surrounds the bridge, allowing it to be taken from the outside area, but fighting is more typical inside the lower level and beneath the archway, where vastly more protection is available, especially from the hills to the north. Going east and through a minor ravine from the A flag, players in the northern lane encounter the town of Narvik, or what's left of it, where two of the map's objectives are located. Having sustained heavy damage in the bombardment, most of the town is in ruins, limiting the effective cover and map detail in this sizable area. Of the structures still standing, they are largely identical and destructible, promoting a somewhat bland and potentially frustrating experience owing to the directional exposure. There is enough rubble and fires burning to provide a quick change of scenery and a cool effect, but players do have a chance of getting stuck on objects on the ground. Nevertheless, the village, being only a portion of the map, makes it acceptable, since if you hate it, you can go play on the lower zone instead. First, in the center, the C point is a collection of houses largely undamaged. Well, at least until the players get to it. It's an objective of moderate size and a considerable amount of cover, at least initially, and hiding spaces are plentiful. This can make the flag a game of cat and mouse as you hunt down a lone enemy. Its inevitable destruction definitely hurts its enjoyment, even with fortifications built up. Being in the map's dead center, the sightlines from the outside can also be problematic, especially from that northern slope. A vehicle resupply station is found on the street above, making it a major destination for roaming armor in need of ammo and health. This can be a double-edged sword, as the frustration of having an enemy tank on the station and be extremely effective is counter to the enjoyment of setting a trap for the next one to arrive. With few visual identifiers to its name, the E objective is the ammo depot. It lies just to the east through a destroyed section of the town. Applying characteristics of both the A and C flags, E isn't exactly detailed, comprising 2 homes and a small hill to the north on which a stationary Pak-40 and AA guns sit. It isn't exactly the worst flag to fight over either, but the northern German deployment sits nearby to the east, creating a constant problem. 2 houses outside flag radius have line of sight to the point, and it is common to see players camping here. In the event of a full capture in the British favor, the Germans have a slightly easier time breaking through the pass to the north, but this isn't a sure thing. The objective furthest southeast is the ore depot, and one of the most distinct on the map outside of the train bridge. This solidifies the lower 3 flag trio as the most interesting half of the map design. The depot sits on the dockyards, making it visually distinct. Huge iron ore piles around it create line-of-sight blocks and cover, although they can be used as firing angles as well. The capture zone is full of places for players to seek protection, ranging from 2 buildings, fences, stationary train cars, and stacks of crates and lumber. The only negative to the objective remains its vulnerability to enemies on the high ground to the north, and its position so close to the lower German deployment, which does keep it parallel to the B flag and its British deployment. The spacing of the flags on Narvik is pretty good, but the linear layout of the objectives and, oddly, the cover between them actually incentivizes player hoarding and large team pushes. This is also partially a result of Battlefield 5's Attrition system. A lone player might want to push a flag, but being damaged amongst the cover in between points often will leave them without full health and be at a major disadvantage if they push ahead. Therefore, staying together as a horde, where medics can revive quickly and resupply the health, is a far more common occurrence. This also factors heavily into the design's habit to be fully captured, since the linear layout and players pushing together roll on from one flag to the next. There is also a tendency for most players to stay in their lane, such as it is, meaning they stick to the dockyard side or the village side, rarely zigzagging between them unless absolutely necessary. A railway track which divides the upper and lower zones has cover in the form of snowdrifts and scattered minecars. This is solid protection in this change of terrains, yet players will often use the elevation advantage of these middle slopes to fire down at the dockyard flags, but not necessarily push for them. This isn't the worst gameplay element to deal with, but long sightlines down the stretch of the map are a bit excessive. The vehicle counts on Narvik are actually spot on. From the deployments, 1 tank category and 2 aircraft can be chosen per side, plus a half-track. Given the map's linear layout, the armor numbers allow them to clash at certain points without being overwhelmed, and permits infantry to flank or avoid them. Usually they can be found along the northern stretch, rarely pushing forward from where the map's vehicle resupply stations are located. The few stationary PaK-40 emplacements might also have something to say about their movements, and are usually a good detail of the level design, easy as they are to deal with. Aircraft have a slightly funkier time balance-wise. The vast quantities of AA stationed around the back flags and main bases generally keeps air power in check, even with the odd rocket meta state the game was left with. Thanks to Battlefield 5's player freedom pools of absurdity, you easily could have a situation of 4 heavy bombers on the map at a time, completely ignoring each other all round long. In this case, the linear layout occasionally bunches teams at objectives, permitting wild bombing runs. Multiple manned anti-aircraft batteries can deal with this, but careful attention of their position allows a plane to turn around in time to avoid them. While these aircraft variations can and do deviate, it would have been a far easier situation just to have a set of map-specific planes to choose from. Even so, Narvik is a fairly enjoyable map to fly on, as you can dogfight over the bay or come in behind enemy lines for a major score. The main bases of Narvik form the largest basis of player complaints with regard to gameplay experiences, and both teams have near identical problems. These stem from the map's tendency to be completely overrun by one of the 2 sides. Each base having 2 deployment locations is a major positive, but rarely makes a difference in this case. Both teams' lower deployment is considerably more detailed, what with the rail yard on the UK side and the ore depot on the other. While this extra base detail is great to have on the map, a clash in these areas tends to stay in these areas, and players need an alternative route to take. On the upper deployments, the problem becomes one of overexposure. A lack of cover and distant spawn points make it difficult to break back into the map proper. The structures in and around the E flag provide protection and sightlines to aid a British hold here, while on the opposite end, the high ground west of the A point is brutal, effectively locking the team on the low ground. One could argue that there are just not enough light transports in the deployments of either team, but with a layout like this, where would they even go? Narvik also implements a comeback mechanic unique to Battlefield 5. Perhaps anticipating a problem with full captures, the deployments will offer 2 additional tanks and 2 additional planes to the losing side. One might think that the vehicular power this provides would help rectify the dire situation, but unfortunately it does not. First, the bonus tanks don't do much. This owes to multiple simultaneous factors. We must remember that during a cap-out situation, the majority of a winning team will slowly congregate along the deployment area border of the losing team. Usually on a map like this, medium and heavy tanks are chosen. Their slow speed not only makes it time-consuming to push up the hill and into the map, but they must deal with an overwhelming amount of enemies during that process. Second, the vehicle attrition system of Battlefield 5 incentivizes tanks to stay at range away from danger, utilizing the strength of their weapons. Because the battle is raging right in front of them, they also have no reason to leave the vehicle resupply station. Even in the event that they do want to push, speed is a problem, since Battlefield 5's ticket bleed during a full cap is stupendously fast. Bonus aircraft are a different problem altogether. While the intention is for planes to bomb the living daylights out of the enemy team and clear a path, this rarely happens. In many cases, a few inexperienced pilots snag these and don't know what to do with them. Other times, they prioritize the 2 enemy planes in the air and look to have a dogfight. On rare attempts, they might bail at a back flag, and for all the potential available to them, this is usually the most effective option. For despite having multiple planes in the air, it only removes more players from the ground trying to push objectives. A bonus chance here to critique Battlefield 5's specialization system allows me to point out that even though the heavy bombers can be equipped with a mobile spawn point drop, no one ever uses it because there are just better options to run. Switching to it for one go is annoying, and players can't even adjust these on the deployment screen while waiting anyway unless a plane happens to become selectable. Finally, even with bonus aircraft, these are often able to be taken down, which isn't a hard thing to imagine given that the winning team controls all of the map's ground AAs. Once down, these still take a long time to respawn, and again, the ticket bleed is brutal. Therefore, Narvik's combat mechanic, well-intentioned as it might be, just falls flat. Overall, the topographical divide of Narvik is one of its strong suits. The docks forming the lower three objectives have their own rough appeal. The buildings and railway material of the F flag provide a great engagement zone, and the iron ore pile nearby is visually cool, even if it does just amount to a large hill. The different art style, mining materials, icy waterfront, and especially the element of the train bridge make it an enjoyable section to fight over, and ultimately are the redeeming parts of the level. The upper tier section of Narvik does more harm than good. Not so much the almost cookie-cutter buildings forming the village, but the shifts in elevation and super long sightlines from the A point and the northern slopes above. The town, regardless of its destructive quality, does provide decent protection, and the smoldering ruins often make for a good battle zone. If not with interruptions from the greater hillsides, this may have been a really favorable area. Despite these positive aspects of Narvik, it is rare to find gamers clamoring to play it. This is as much the fault of the main base design as it is the bright aesthetic. There is an overwhelming shading of white from the layers of snow, which the sun above enhances further. The wintry environment is shoved in your face, and when looking up, the towering mountains greet you with the same overwhelming glare. Perhaps part of the frustration is the overlap in biomes with Fjell just next door. Narvik's most obvious problem remains its blandness. There was just no incentive nor a deep desire to load into it. Possessed as it was with many layout troubles, what was lacking most was a sense of awe. Except that there was. For only a brief single sector of grand operations, Narvik came alive. Day became night, moonlight replaced sunshine, overwhelming bright snow became a cool reflective canvas. Fire illuminated the scale of war, and above, stars painted over with the majesty of the aurora borealis contrasted the horror of battle with the overwhelming natural beauty of the northern sky. It is one of the most breathtaking environments ever created in a Battlefield map, such that I struggle to pull my eyes away and focus on the task at hand. I could watch it for hours. Even the snowfall is not lost as mere embellishment. The travesty of Narvik is that many players never witnessed this incredible atmosphere. As Battlefield 5 faded from popularity, so did Grand Operations, and the airborne sector, which saw attackers try and destroy a series of anti-aircraft batteries, was one which largely became forgotten. Moreover, those who never played Grand Operations never knew it existed at all, despite being the alpha and beta map and mode for the game. For all the work clearly poured into this environment, to abandon it in Conquest was a tragedy. Technical limitations with Conquest scaling, lighting properties, or reflective assets via ray tracing are all possible culprits, but ones which should have been mercilessly overcome. The high bar set by Battlefield 1's Nouvelle Nights would have been matched, arguably even exceeded. Whatever the minor layout faults or gameplay oddities left over, this is how the map ought to have been remembered. This is the map I want to play. This should have been Narvik. While Narvik in its common Conquest form is underwhelming and prone to minor level design hiccups, it is not without charm nor enjoyable gameplay experiences. Balance is acceptable, playstyles variable, and vehicles mildly appropriate. Nearly all of the elements are present to coalesce a fantastic map, most just required refinement, especially the main deployments. But the white environment, blinding and unremarkable, not just within the map borders, but everywhere beyond, left it unwelcome and unappreciated. The Narvik of Airborne, in contrast, illuminated the map detail from simple houses to the train bridge, warships in the bay to the grandeur of the mountain peaks. It was this level of ambiance that Narvik needed in Conquest, and it represents a shimmering hint of the true beauty which Battlefield 5 was capable of as well.